Hey everyone, welcome to Book Overflow. This is the podcast for software engineers by software engineers, where every week we read one of the best technical books in the world in an effort to improve our craft. I'm Carter Morgan, and I'm joined here, as always, by my co-host, Nathan Toups. How are you, Nathan?
Hey, everybody.
Well, this episode of Book Overflow is interesting. It's another bonus episode. We tend to do our bonus episodes on Thursday. Lately, we've been doing a bonus episode every week. We don't always promise that, but we've had a good haul lately. Usually we interview the authors of the books, and that's been so much fun. But we wanted to try something new this week. And like we say in the intro to this podcast, we read one of the best technical books in the world, but it's in an effort to improve our craft. And we think you can improve your craft in a lot of ways aside from maybe just reading a book. So we've been thinking about trying to talk to interesting and fascinating people in the software world, even if they're not necessarily authors or even necessarily maniacs like us who read a book a week. And this week we had Devin Davies on. If you haven't heard of him, he is the solo developer of the iOS recipe app Crouton and the winner of the Apple Design Award recently, the first person from New Zealand to ever win it, and one of the very few people to win it as a solo app developer. So the opportunity came up to interview him, and we thought, this seems like a really fascinating guy. Let's jump at it and find out how he improves his craft and what his learning process is like. I thought this interview was a blast. Nathan, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I really hope that we get to, spread out the breadth of folks that get interviewed on this podcast, because it's inspiring to see someone from backgrounds that took a weekend warrior project and then turned it into a livelihood. That's so cool.
Absolutely. That's been one of the sub themes of this podcast, is kind of the unconventional paths a lot of us take to become software engineers. And so we thought it'd be cool to talk to someone like that. This podcast is still in its infancy, and so we're kind of figuring out our direction. Listeners, tune in, listen to the whole thing, because he's really just such a fascinating, humble, really cool guy. And let us know if this is something that you like and you want to hear more of. Let us know in the comments. Email us at contact@bookoverflow.io. We'd love to hear from it, because we think it's super cool to be able to talk to these people. If we should be focusing more on the books and maybe doing exclusively author interviews, let us know that too. We want to hear from you. But really stick around for this whole interview, because he is such a cool guy. And it's such a huge honor for us to, this podcast has only been going for about 2 months now, and to already be talking with an Apple Design Award winner is just a huge treat. So stick around. This is going to be Devin Davies. He's going to share some of his learning strategies and how he's gone from just like Nathan said, a weekend warrior working on Crouton in the evenings to an Apple Design Award winner. Great conversation. We hope you enjoy it. Stick around. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Devin. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing pretty well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. We were just talking before the call how you're in New Zealand, I'm in Utah, and Nathan is in Barcelona right now. And so between all of us, I think we're like all exactly like 8 hours apart or something crazy like that.
Really spanning the globe.
Yeah. Well, we're so excited to talk to you. I wanted to just first talk to you just about Crouton. Obviously, that's kind of your claim to fame right now, having won the Apple Design Award. Talk to us just about Crouton and why you had that particular idea and why you kind of felt so passionate about developing that particular app.
Yeah, totally. So with Crouton, I've always sort of been into cooking when I was growing up. And then when I moved out and got married, I was doing all of the meal planning for our family and cooking every night. And so to begin with, I was actually just using the Notes app on my phone. Basically just had the days of the week at the top and then a huge list of just names of recipes or links underneath. And that worked like pretty well. Got the job done. Alongside that, I'd finished up a computer science degree at uni and got a job doing as a junior iOS developer. So I started learning app development and just like really, really enjoyed it straight away and wanted to, I guess, just keep doing it in the evenings as well. Try and, just learn more and build more. And so it was kind of like a nice crossover where my note got a bit unwieldy and I also had this new skill. So it's like, oh, maybe I could build something simple that makes this a bit easier for me, and makes meal planning at the start of the week slightly more enjoyable. And so that was really the start of it, was just sort of building a tool that made my life a bit more simple. And then we've just crossed 5 years of Crouton, and so over that 5 years, I've kind of built it out to be, I guess, a bit more of a product and something that now a lot of other people are using, which has been very cool.
I'm always jealous of like iOS or Android app developers or front end developers, because my domain is kind of more cloud infrastructure, and so there's never like in my day to day like, it would solve this, a Lambda function, right? So I think it's super cool that you can just have that problem you're facing in your day to day life. Because until I found Crouton, I was the same way. I was just it was just a bunch of notes. So that's awesome. So you get a job right out of school doing iOS development. Is that something you sought out, or is it just kind of by happenstance that was your first offer?
I think I got very fortunate. iOS development, I mean, I've always been pretty passionate about Apple products, and so iOS development was kind of like a goal of where I'd love to get to, but I didn't have any experience in iOS development, so I thought, I probably just have to get any job and kind of work towards that. But fortunately, when I was looking for a job, there's an agency in Christchurch that which is where I live in New Zealand, that specializes in mobile development, and they were looking for graduates that they could sort of train sort of on the job, and so it was just quite good timing, really.
Kind of the whole ethos of our podcast is continuing education, learning via self-study, kind of going above and beyond just your standard day-to-day responsibilities. So you have this iOS job, but then you're also doing Crouton in the evenings. How much did you have to kind of learn on the side to make Crouton, or was there a lot kind of in your day-to-day that was directly applicable?
Yeah, I think that's something that sort of really helped me is when I'm doing iOS development as my day job, and then in the evenings, you're sort of solving similar problems. And so you learn things at work that you can then sort of use those learnings to apply on your own projects, and then vice versa. So there's been a number of occasions where I might have spent some time in the evenings learning about a new technology, and then down the road, that same technology comes up at work for a specific application. And so already having that experience gives you the opportunity to work on those, because you might know something that other people haven't had a chance to look at yet. And so I think it's sort of, like a really nice synergy there between having both of them at the same time.
Have you been developing in Swift the whole time? Or I know that there's like a lot of options when you're doing mobile development as far as languages go.
Yeah, predominantly, especially like on my own projects, certainly Swift. At my day job, we did Android as well, so Kotlin there, and done a bit of web, so some React. But I would say Swift is sort of where I've specialized. And then there's obviously Objective-C from sort of the legacy apps. I've done a bit of that, but yeah, predominantly Swift.
That's cool.
What's it like? I know that something that kind of catapulted Crouton into maybe more of the public consciousness. I think it was Joanna Stern. She had the Wall Street Journal, and I saw that video where she wore the Apple Vision Pro for like 24 hours or something like that. And I think she showed the Crouton app with for cooking, and you could have the individual timers. And I will say that was how I discovered Crouton too, and seeing the timers hovering over the different things you could cook, because I'm a big kind of augmented reality fanboy. I think it has promise. And so seeing that, I showed that to all my friends and family. I'm like, see, if you don't get it, like this is something that you could see. I mean, we got to get the form factor down, but this is a really cool use case here. Obviously, Apple Vision Pro is a new kind of ecosystem, a new development platform to work with. I imagine that a lot of your work had to be somewhat self-taught to kind of get Crouton up and running on the Vision Pro. Talk to us a bit about that and what it was like learning to develop for Vision Pro as opposed to just iOS.
Sure. Yeah, that was a really interesting experience, because they announced it at WWDC last year. That's Apple's developer conference. But then they didn't launch the product until February this year. So there was about an 8-month sort of time frame where you actually couldn't even use the product to get a sense of how it was going to feel. And so they had a pretty good simulator that you could use as part of Xcode. But obviously there's quite a difference between looking at a 2D representation of it on your computer screen versus actually sort of having it on your head. And so you spend a lot of time using the keyboard and controls to move things around, whereas that actually just becomes, you just look at something. And then alongside that, obviously a very new SDK. So the sort of, I guess, tutorials and extra help out there is sort of still just being built, and the people building that also can't use the device. So it's really pretty sparse in terms of, I guess, extra help to find. So it was kind of exciting in a way as well. I think I've always wanted to have the experience of being early to a new platform, and so it was kind of fun to ride that wave a little bit. In terms of learning, I think the key thing there for me was just kind of thinking about the outcomes I wanted to get to, and kind of using that as like kind of a path. And so it's like, what problems do I need to solve to get to that specific solution? And so you kind of, I guess, just keep hitting those walls, and then do some research, try and figure out how to get past that, and sort of trying to keep in mind that end sort of user experience that I'm trying to achieve, and then working out what steps I need to do to get to that point.
What kind of research were you reading? I imagine a lot of it was just kind of Apple's documentation. There's probably not a ton of forum or Stack Overflow posting at the time when you're developing it, right?
Yeah. Luckily, I guess, with Apple's platforms, they do, they all use this Swift, and now with SwiftUI for building the UI, a lot of the basics are shared across the platforms, which is nice. So in terms of sort of basic functionality, you can find material there. But more recently, Apple have been doing a really good job of their own documentation, or at least of their own sort of videos that they put out when they release new SDKs and APIs. They now put out these sort of really nice digestible sort of 10-minute videos where they break down, what's new. They usually have a design focused one where they talk about it from a high level, and then they'll have a second sort of deep dive video that shows you the actual sort of code snippets. And so for me, I try and just watch as many of those as I can, and then just sort of like note down any snippets. I use the Notes app a lot for a lot of different things. And so I'll often just, even if I'm just on Twitter or wherever, and someone posts something that they've figured out, if it's something I think might be useful down the line, I usually just throw that into my notes. And quite a lot of time I find myself coming back to those links that I've kind of saved or built up over time.
What do you think sort of cultivates that lifelong learner attitude? I think there are some software engineers who kind of are okay. I don't know if you've ever heard, like, kind of, do you have 10 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience repeated 10 times? There's some people that just learn enough to get by and keep doing it. And I think some people kind of reach a point in their career where they recognize, oh, wait, that's me. And I might need to learn and progress. You seem like someone who has not had that trouble. You're constantly learning and adding to your skill set. What drives you to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I care a lot about sort of, I guess, user experience. And so, with technology, it's always changing, and the expectations from users are always changing. And so if I want to be able to provide the best user experience possible, you sort of are forced to keep up with trends and new technologies. And yeah, I think I've always just had a passion for that. And so when new stuff comes out, I'm keen just to try and understand it and try it out as quickly as I can. I guess I'm not sure necessarily how to encourage like cultivation of that. I feel like it's almost just something that's been there.
Well, but I like what you're saying about how you have that passion for user experience, and that drives your learning. I think there are some people who may have that passion, but they don't necessarily connect it with, and I have to improve in X, Y, and Z in order to deliver that better experience. Or there are some people that don't feel particularly passionate about the industry. And hey, listen, sometimes you're just here to collect a paycheck. There's no harm in that, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's always more fun to be excited about something, right? And so I like that kind of idea of find out what's fun and what's motivating, what's exciting about this industry to you, and then what more could you learn about that to more effectively kind of drive that, that mission.
Definitely. Yeah. And I guess it's not like learning for learning's sake. Sometimes, I mean, some people, I guess, do like that approach, and then you're just sort of maybe going for breadth of knowledge or really deep diving on something. But I think for me, it's always sort of, about the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. If I've got like an idea for a feature that I think would be sort of fun or very useful, it's what do I need to learn to get to that outcome, as opposed to just sort of learning aimlessly.
Nathan and I are kind of maniacs and decided, let's read a book a week and figure out,
It's impressive.
what all we learn from that. It's actually, it's kind of an experiment for both of us. Who knows, maybe in 2 years we'll say, well, we just learned a lot of stuff, but it's too much. And so maybe we'll dial it back. Who knows? I hope not. But
I recently watched Forrest Gump with my daughter. My daughter is 8 years old. She's turning 9 this year. And I feel like, he just starts running, and then he runs for like 2.5 years, and then he just stops one day. And I'm like, maybe that's going to be us.
I was making an announcement one day, like, well, we read all the books we want.
The middle of an
finished
empty road
reading.
in Arizona. Yeah.
No more reading.
What was the first app that you ever built?
That's a good question. I think it actually was Crouton in a different form. When I was applying for the job for iOS development, I was like, I better do something just so I can at least, look like I know what I'm doing. And so I downloaded Xcode and I had no idea what I was doing. I dragged a few things around, and I basically just had this one screen that would show you the days of the week, and it had a recipe, like the name of a recipe against each one. And like you couldn't tap on them, you couldn't do anything. It just the days of the week and a name. And
that's amazing.
I was pretty proud of that. Then they got shelved. I got the job, and that got shelved for a year or so. And then I guess I don't think I reused any of that when I started Crouton, but yeah, very similar idea.
That was my first programming job was in college, and I worked we had a kind of a missionary training center that was like part of, but also not part of the college. And yeah, that's not important. I got a job working on the language training apps that they use. And I was the same way. I'm like, I got this programming interview. I should probably code something. And I made one of those, it was like one of those 20 question games, like Akinator, where like you're thinking of a character and then, it whittles it down. But I did it with the kids from my high school marching band. And so you would ask it, it'd ask you yes or no questions about like, you a boy? Are you a girl? Did you play trumpet? And then it would, and I programmed it to always ask the closest to a 50-50 split to get there, in the most efficient way.
Little binary search algorithm.
Well, what's hilarious is that I didn't even know what that was when I first built it.
Just invented it.
I know, right? I'm a genius.
That's cool, though. I've given that advice to folks who are trying to break into the industry. I had a friend who was like a barista, and he went back to like a code school, and he was trying to like prove himself to get his first job, because that's it's so hard, right? Somebody has to take a risk on you. They have to see something in you that you're hoping, that you've got enough skill and enough hunger. I think there's an Austin Kleon book. It's called Show Your Work. And I'm a huge fan of that, right? Like just build something, talk about it, see what you learn, share that. It's like, it makes you so much more interesting. And it's really cool that that's what you did for this first job. It also is like planted the seed for the other stuff that you're doing.
Definitely. Yeah. And I know like when I got to the point where I was then interviewing other people for those similar roles, people that turn up with an example of something they've built, even if it's very basic, I guess like mine was, it just kind of shows that there's, some passion or some drive there, and it helps you understand how they approach problem solving, which is often more important than their technical abilities at the time. I think if you can see that they solve problems and work through things, that's kind of the important part.
Well, I mean, I think it's something so fundamental to this industry is being a lifelong learner, because even someone like you, who's obviously very skilled in iOS development, I bet 10 years from now, iOS development looks very different than it does right now. And so you can't just keep doing the same thing. You've always got to be staying sort of up to date. Have there been, in your time doing iOS development, any interesting changes to how it's done, or any sort of new paradigms you've had to grapple with and learn about?
I mean, I guess the main one is really the transition from UIKit, which was the old UI framework, to SwiftUI.
Do you want to explain that a bit for our listeners who aren't as familiar with iOS development?
Yeah, definitely. So previously, when you're building applications for iOS, you'd use a UI framework called UIKit, which is very sort of like, they'd have like an interface builder where you could sort of drag things around and you add constraints. And, when you want to update the content, it's very manual. Whereas more recently, they introduced SwiftUI, which is more declarative and works a bit more like React, where you kind of bind properties to the UI and it updates automatically. but it's quite a shift in terms of how you think about approaching building the UI. And so if you come at it from a UIKit perspective and try and sort of shoehorn it in, it can be quite challenging, and I think you run into a lot of issues. Whereas if you sort of approach it fresh and treat it for what it is, then it can be very powerful. And so, for me, I've actually taken a long time to switch over to using it because I was so comfortable in UIKit, and I actually found it really hard. It's like I could, especially when I was working in the evenings on Crouton, it's like if I build this in UIKit, I could have it done in like half an hour. But if I do SwiftUI, I'm going to have to spend an hour learning how to do what I want to do. And so I guess there's an example where I was like pretty hesitant to learn something new because of the efficiency I guess I built up with the old thing. But more recently, when visionOS came out, Apple, I guess, really pushed on SwiftUI, and there's certain things that you just can't do in UIKit, especially on visionOS. And so it's kind of, I guess, the writing's on the wall. It's like you really, if you want to keep doing this for the next 10 years, you should start using this. And so I've been doing that more and more. And now it's getting to the point where if I have to do something in UIKit, it's like, that's going to be a drag. So, yeah.
I learned recently that Graydon Hoare, who was the original creator of Rust, is actually working on the Swift team.
Really?
For the language. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's just like a little weird fact of
cool.
Imagine working on two like prolific languages, modern languages.
That's
an impressive career.
Yeah. I remember when I said this in the podcast before, but I got my start working at Disney, and I remember doing my onboarding videos, and it was like, "Hi, I'm Mark Hamill," and he did like the kind of like HR like introduction, and I was like, "Whoa, it's Mark Hamill," like he's Luke Skywalker is welcoming me to Disney. This is crazy. And then later in my career, I wound up working for a big tech company, and at one point, some guy comes on the video, was like, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm the inventor of Java." I was like, "Oh, like this is this is a little different from Luke Skywalker." Equally cool. In some ways, Luke Skywalker is more cool. But I was like, "Oh, like they're handling this is a little different." So you win the Apple Design Award. Talk to us a bit about what that's like. I mean, and help me understand. I believe Crouton, for a while, I mean, it's a one-man job, right? It's just you doing Crouton, or do you have helpers?
Yeah, it's just me, and up until quite recently, it's just been kind of like an evenings thing. So I've still had that job that I got out of university, and so it's just been me up until now. And obviously, it started off as just a project to make my life a bit more easy, and now lots of people use it. And so I think to get to the point of winning a design award for it has been pretty kind of surreal, and
that's
obviously
insane.
like a dream, but not something I expected would ever actually happen. So
talk to us a bit about what that's. I mean, does someone just call you up and say, "Hey, they just announced on stage you won a design award," or I mean, what does that even look like, winning an Apple Design Award?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of a process there. You do, you find out ahead of time. Luckily, it's not sort of sprung upon you.
It's not the Oscars.
Yeah.
I'd tune in if it were like the Oscars.
They did in previous years. They did it. They used to do like an award ceremony at the Apple Developer Conference with. So what they do still do is they announce the finalists. So they have normally they have 6 categories. They added a new category this year for spatial computing, and then across each category, 1 game and 1 app win. But they nominate 3 apps and 3 games for each category. So there's 30-something finalists. So you find out that you're a finalist, and then normally you would then go to Cupertino for the developer conference, and they'd have a ceremony where they read out the finalists and then announce the winner. And that would be pretty crazy to then find out with everyone else. This year they did it a little bit different, where they actually pre-announced the winners before the conference, and then at the conference it was more of like a meet and greet opportunity to chat with the winners, and they had a private ceremony where they handed out the awards. So I think it was kind of nice to not have that kind of like, anxiety or like build up, and it was nice to kind of find out ahead of time and then just enjoy the conference. But to find out that I was a finalist, and then I was up against like Procreate and Arc from the browser company. So
wow.
I was like,
you won out against
no
Arc.
way.
That's
yeah, when I
crazy.
saw the finalists, I was like, "There's no way I'm going to win this," but at least like me being a finalist, that's awesome and cool. Then when I found out I was a winner, that was just like, yeah, bonkers.
It's cool to see happen though, because I think one of the things I really like about this industry is it can be fairly meritocratic in that one guy from New Zealand can do great work, right? And then get acknowledged on a global scale like that. I think there are kind of very few industries like that. In a lot of places, you have to have specific connections or a lot of resources or things like that. What's your advice to someone who maybe has an idea, wants to get started with it, but doesn't is maybe scared or unsure of themselves or thinks it won't pan out or something like that?
Yeah, totally. And I think, and to your point as well, I think it is really cool to, before, I guess there have been other independent developers that have won it, but I definitely, yeah, to have something that's sort of, I guess, a side project, like make it that far, I think hopefully is really encouraging for people to be like, oh, I could do that too. Because I certainly don't feel like I'm a like a maestro or a genius or anything. I feel like I just have worked on it for a long time and been very lucky and fortunate in a few ways. And so I think hopefully that on its own can be encouraging to people. I think the main thing or something that helps is if you're going to build something that you'll use yourself. That way, if it doesn't pan out straight away, you're at least getting some use out of it. So with Crouton, for the first, at least first year, maybe even longer, I was really the only full-time user of it. And it didn't get that much traction at all, but it solved the problem for me. And I was finding ways I could add things that would improve it and make it more useful. So even though there wasn't a financial motivation or a motivation of users, I was motivated to work on it. And I think that helps sort of push you through those early years where, unless you have like a viral success, I think there it just takes a bit of time to get the traction. And so I would encourage people to try and solve their own problems first, unless you've got an idea that you just know is going to like land and be great for other people. Obviously there are cases like that, but I think if you're wanting to work on something in your spare time, it helps if it's something that you care about.
I've been working on Tinder for cats for years. Now that's an idea that's just going to land. That's my go-to app if I want to parody ridiculous apps. It's Tinder for cats.
So my parody startup was called Executive Summary, and it was a Twitter to fax interface, so that you could for the busy executive, you just print fax your top tweets. You can circle
Sign
it
me up.
and then.
One day when Nathan and I are also Apple Design Award winners, we'll all hang out together.
Quite a collective.
What do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned from, your career in general, but probably Crouton? What do you think?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think definitely just like perseverance and time, I think is big. And I also think just making the most of like any opportunity that comes up. I guess I'm quite a shy, reserved person, but sometimes things come up that you don't really want to do, but you kind of think might lead somewhere. And so I think I've found that just saying yes to like almost every opportunity, even if you think it's a bit like too scary or a bit maybe like out of your usual lane, I think often those end up panning out, or you learn things from those that then become useful in other ways. And so yeah, I've just found like just say yes to as many things as you can, and then try and stay passionate.
Well, I was just going to comment and say, I really like what you say about kind of saying yes to every opportunity. We found as we've been reading a lot of books, something that's kind of struck me when you look at these authors is none of them are kind of dyed in the wool, destined to be great software engineers from the moment they were born. A lot have unconventional paths. A lot may have started out a little rockier and then found their footing later. We talked to people like John Osterhout, who is a Stanford professor now, but started out as a physics student. Robert, Uncle Bob, Robert Martin has no college degree, right? But has become a big name in the industry. So yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to the idea that the people who wind up doing really well for themselves are doing what you said, just capitalizing on those opportunities.
Totally.
What made you pick computer science? Like, what drew you to that degree program?
It was actually, I thought originally I was going to go more like fully into graphic design. While I was at high school, I don't know if you call it high school.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, great. Yeah.
You ever
While I
heard
was
of
at
High School Musical?
Oh, true. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, all the words usually different. That one's the same. That's good. um, I got really into graphic design there, and I had a great teacher that was super encouraging. But then in New Zealand, at least, that's a bit of a harder field to sort of get established in. And so I'd always had a passion for technology, and my dad's a software developer. So he was like, why don't you try and combine the two things and focus on UX and things like that? And so, going to uni and doing computer science just sort of seemed like a good way to get a strong foundation in the, the computer science sort of principles. And then once I had that, then sort of bring the design back in on top of it.
That's awesome. I'm super jealous of people like you who have that eye for good design. I can pick apart a bad design from a good design, but I can't tell you at all why one's bad or one's good. I have no. And someone's like, yeah, like I can. Someone give me a Figma, and I can make the thing look like the Figma. But I, for the life of me, cannot create.
Oh, that's still a good skill. Some people can't do that.
I'm a big Figma fan.
Yeah, Figma's good. I use Sketch personally, but Figma is good.
Nice.
Yeah. I think like a lot of it is just time. I'm a big believer that like maybe I often think that talent like doesn't really exist. Maybe it does in some cases, but I think most of the time the people that you think are talented have just put an awful lot of time into it, and you haven't seen them doing that. And so I think it can be easy to sort of look at someone and think, oh, I wish I was like that. But I think you have to look at the time they've put into it, and everyone's making different trade-offs and upskilling in different ways. And so I think it's important not to be discouraged when other people are better at different things, because they've usually had to give up something, or you've gained something that they haven't had.
So when you're looking for motivation or continued education, are there specific websites or link aggregators or places that you go to look for either design thinking or programming stuff?
Yeah, with programming stuff, there's a website specifically for like Swift and Apple platforms called Hacking with Swift. That's really great. Just the way that they consolidate information down and just give you like the relevant bits and really clearly sort of explain how it's working is super great. And also, as I mentioned before, more recently, Apple's own documentation has gotten really good. And I spend a lot of more time than I should on like Twitter and Mastodon. And so I try to follow people that are sharing what they're working on. And I found that's a great way to also just find out how to do certain things. People often post their learnings. And so, that's where I'll like save some links for later and follow up on those. And then in terms of, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, in terms of design stuff, I think I'm always just like on the lookout for new apps or different ways people are doing things. And so just trying to, if I find a good example of something, just take a screenshot and look at it. I think, it's helpful to kind of, I guess, like build like a sense of taste. And you can do that just by looking at software that you use and working out what's good about it and why you like using it.
I like that idea of kind of being an active observer in the world. That's something. I'm a big Disney fan, and in particular Walt Disney, and I read a biography about him, and that's something I really took from him, is that he was very opinionated about when he would go to like that's why when he created Disneyland, right? It was kind of a result of him going to lots of other theme parks and saying, but they're doing this wrong, I like this, we would do this better over here. I think like you're saying, you can learn a lot just by not being a passive consumer of everything that's coming your way, but asking yourself, would I do it this way? Would I do it differently?
Totally. Yeah. I think it drives my wife a bit crazy sometimes when you're always just questioning why things are working certain ways, but it has its benefits as well.
It's something I love doing with my wife, but I've had to realize like I can't do this like with other companies. Like I love picking apart the value of something. Like after a dinner, we'll kind of say like, was that worth the $40 we paid for it? Or, what would I have paid more? Would I have paid less? And like, I don't care. The dinner's over, right? And I enjoyed the dinner, but we're asking ourselves like, what was that really worth? And it's super obnoxious to most people in the world. But I love doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've got to choose your company, but it's definitely, I think it's fun.
That's cool. My background is actually in theater, focused in sound design, and so
Oh, awesome.
I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to computer science and the more rigorous stuff, but um, I love that sort of intersection of design and technology. I think that folks who like play in that category bring so much interesting stuff to the table. Um, you know, I was building computers to solve like sound design problems, but people who do visual stuff too, it's like this is your time to shine. This is so many cool interfaces and like ways of solving problems. Have you have you done any stuff with the Apple Watch, or do you have a like I'm not as familiar with like all the platforms that Crouton is on, so
Yeah, the Apple Watch is an interesting one. I do have like a companion app for it. So when you're in the kitchen and cooking a recipe on your phone, you can then view the ingredients and the steps on your watch. I guess the thinking there is like, maybe you nip into the pantry and forget how much of a certain thing you need or what you went in there for. And so it's sort of like it's a companion to what you're doing on the phone rather than a standalone thing. I think the Apple Watch has had kind of a weird journey where it launched and everyone thought, oh, we're going to build all of our apps for this and it's going to be just like the iPhone. Then I think pretty quickly people realized that most people use their watch just for activities and for getting notifications.
exactly.
And very few people actually go into third-party apps. And so a lot of the big companies just completely pulled their applications from the store. I think more recently Apple's done some stuff to try and clarify, what might make a good watch experience. And they've also made some of the tooling easier to use because originally it was quite restrictive. And so I think maybe we'll see maybe there'll be a little bit of a resurgence of Apple Watch apps. But I think, you've got to be really careful about what sort of experiences you build for it that, will actually be useful.
When I have an Apple Watch and I'm a big fan of it, but for a long time I felt like I was using it wrong because people would be like, well, what does it do? And I told them like, well, I love it for three things. I love it for notifications, for exercise, and it can beep my phone. And I was like, but I'm sure lots of other people are using it for lots of other things. And I found like, no, that's how everyone uses it. It's really just those three things.
I think like my wife didn't have one for a long time. And I think she sort of, was the critic of it of like, what is it actually useful? And then she got one. And I think once you have it, you kind of realize that those three things are sort of enough to justify it and are actually really useful. It feels like there should be a need for other apps, but I think it does most of what it needs to do just with the built-in stuff.
It's interesting because since now we're attaching a piece of technology to ourselves and wearing it around all day, but I find it almost makes me less reliant on the phone. It's really nice to get a quick notification, just take a peek, and then you can leave the phone in your pocket. That's why. Yeah. For our books, I have a Kindle, and I have to read them on the Kindle because I will just flip back and forth between Twitter or whatnot. So there's something about having a dedicated device with limited purpose, I think, that makes that hones the experience.
There's two things that for me, I'm like very aggressive about turning off unnecessary notifications. So my Apple Watch will remind me. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want that. Like the notification will come up, and I'm like, I'm turning that off.
It's actually just helping you trim down your notifications.
Exactly. Because there's a few things that I'm like, this is important, but the rest of it, I'm like, did I need to know that someone wants to be my friend on LinkedIn? Like, I don't need to know that. The other one is sometimes I'll sometimes use the Apple Maps app, and sometimes I'll use the Google Maps app, and the experience on the Apple Watch is very different, or at least it was for a while, where there was haptic feedback when you're about to make a turn. Yeah. And I've actually missed turns because I didn't realize I was on the Google one. And my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what? And she's like, they're the turns right here. I wasn't looking at CarPlay at all because I was just like, oh, it's going to like
just waiting for the taps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are great.
I'm such a sucker with notifications. I have like the Taco Bell app, and it's like, hey, it's the 20th anniversary of Baja Blast. Come get a free Mountain Dew. I'm like, oh, I got to do that.
I don't think I could handle that.
So you're the first. I think I was reading this. Are you the first person from New Zealand to win an Apple Design Award?
That's what they've said, which is pretty crazy. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Definitely,
you must get stopped on the streets all the time.
Not quite. I did like the news outlets. I did like a couple of interviews and was on the news, which was fun. But I think fading back into obscurity pretty quickly.
Not for us. You're here on this podcast.
Yeah.
I see now you're working as the director of Creative Interactions Limited. Is this a new venture that you're a solo venture, or have you moved on to kind of do your own thing? Or are you still working a day job? What's that about?
Yeah. So I kind of have been on a trajectory where I've been aiming to go independent. I thought that was probably, a year or two away. Winning the design awards sort of, I guess, shrunk my timelines up quite a lot. And so in the last few weeks, I've transitioned to, I contract back to the company I was working for just because I really enjoy working there. So I just do that a couple of days a week. And then now I have the rest of the time to focus on Crouton and maybe a few other things down the line. And so, yeah, the Creative Interactions company is sort of just going to be an umbrella for all of those different things, which is exciting.
How are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's been a bit daunting kind of getting it set up. But in terms of kind of having a bit more freedom to jump on opportunities and also just, I think, time to tackle bigger problems with Crouton. A lot of the stuff there's maybe some stuff that I've put off because that's just not what I want to do in my evening. Whereas now having a week to kind of sink my teeth into something has been awesome.
What advice would you have for listeners who might be looking to go down that path to ultimately go independent?
Yeah, I don't know if I guess the one thing that's worked well for me is it's been quite like a slow path. And so I think that's helped kind of mitigate some of the risks. I guess there's benefits to just jumping in straight away. Like if I just jumped straight into Crouton 5 years ago, it gives you a chance to get a lot done very quickly. I think I've quite liked just sort of like building it up slowly. There's definitely been like a point where you've got, I guess, a lot of pressure because you've got the full-time job and then almost another full-time job. So from that perspective, it's tough. But I think kind of doing it slowly and just seeing how it goes has worked out quite well so far.
Oh, very cool. Do you have any final piece of advice for our listeners about how they can improve in their craft? That's kind of, we always say at the beginning of the podcast, it's a podcast dedicated to reading the best books in the world in an effort to improve our craft. So obviously we're very book focused, but it's all means to the end of improving our craft as software engineers. What would be your kind of final parting thoughts to our listeners about how you've improved your craft and how they can improve their craft?
Yeah, I think like a lot of what we've already discussed, but just trying to stay curious and just keep your eye out for things that are going to help you along the way, whether that's, reading a book that is going to touch on those things or just when you're looking for information online. I think if you're just always on the lookout, those things generally serve you pretty well in that direction. And then I think it's about putting in the hard work and then that intersects with luck. And yeah.
Well, very cool. Thanks so much for joining us, Devin. It's really been such a pleasure and an honor to talk with an Apple Design Award winner like yourself. And thanks for sharing all your inspiring thoughts with our listeners. I think we really like that about our listener base is they tend to be very motivated and very excited and pushing themselves in their career. So
that's awesome.
Getting to sit down with someone like yourself who has totally gone the extra mile and has been rewarded for it. It's very cool and very inspiring for our audience, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Devin. You can find Crouton on the App Store, on the iOS App Store. Devin, do you want to plug your Twitter or Mastodon or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Mastodon and Threads. I'm kind of on all of them, regrettably.
I gotta get on Threads.
My handle is just me, Devin. That's the same on all of the platforms. So yeah, come say hi.
Great. And you can find us on Twitter at Book Overflow Pod, and you can find me at Carter Morgan. Super great to talk with you. And Nathan is...
Yeah, I'm on Substack at functionallyimperative.com.
Well, get on Twitter, Nathan. Come join us.
I was on there.
You probably waited too long now, I think.
No, I was on there for a long time, and I had to break up with Twitter. I was just on it too much. So
that's probably a good call.
I broke up with Twitter like 2 weeks ago for about 4 days. I'm like, I'm done with this stupid app. And then some developments happened. I'm like, all right, I'm back.
It was 2017 for me. I got a Facebook in 2014. I got a Twitter in 2017. I do miss it sometimes, and a lot of times I'm like, I know myself. I shouldn't be on there. So.
It's such a blessing and a curse, because that's how I found Devin. Was just well, I knew about Crouton, but then finding him on Twitter. Anyhow, and here we are talking.
That's
with
awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's the problem. I feel like there's too many positives for it that I know. Even though there's a lot of negatives, I'm like, that's yeah.
That's
well,
amazing.
I'm impressed with you. Sorry.
Well, again, thanks so much, Devin, for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Let us know in the comments. Obviously, we've had a ton of fun talking with Devin here. It's a little off the beaten path for what we usually do, but if you liked this interview, let us know. We'll do more. And if you didn't, we might have Devin back again, just because we really like talking to him, and you can put up with it. So, well, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see y'all later.